Yeah.
But it was crazy, Nate. I tell you, there were moments of just like surrealism. Like you're on the bus. I mean, it's the bus, an iteration of the bus, but the bus is the bus. There's no, difference between the old one and the new one. It's the bus.
Welcome to the Music Festivals podcast. This is the show that helps you get to know music festivals, festival venues, and campgrounds before you go. I'm your host, Neighbor Nate, and I'm glad you're in the neighborhood.
All right, neighbors, we are back with another interview, and I am super excited to have someone that I met at the Poe Road Sacred Harvest Festival last year. This is Adam Pergmeant with Flow Poetry. How are you doing, Adam?
I'm doing great, Nate. Great to be here, and thank you so much for making the time and for spreading the word about all the music that you do through your podcast. I really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. It is a labor of love and quite the adventure. We were on summer tour, but you and I met again back at Poe Road. I believe it was last fall at the Sacred Harvest. I think that might have been in September, October, somewhere in there. And you were the late night set, and that was Flow Poetry. And I was absolutely fascinated with what you guys did. So talk to me a little bit about Flow Poetry and where the idea came from.
Well, Flow Poetry is what I've been going by as my artist name, and I've been doing that since 2002. So, about 24 years. Started off as a spoken word poet in the open mics in Madison, Wisconsin, where I lived, and slowly met musicians through doing that. Wound up in a couple bands touring the country, and then kept going with my solo act. And now I'm at a point where I know enough musicians around the country that I can get booked onto a show or a festival and line up some musicians and make some music and hopefully some magic happen. So at Poe Road, that's what you saw. That was the first time I played with Liz Vega and DJ Cancer too, I think. She was on the harp and he was on the thing. And I feel comfortable enough with my material that I can improv and we can talk about it. And as long as we keep the poem kind of front and center, things seem to work out.
Yeah, that's what I thought was really interesting was you guys were just it seemed like you had a basic direction, a framework, but then you were just going with it and improvising and they were listening to you and you could see the back and forth a little bit. It was really cool.
Totally. And it takes a special kind of musician to be able to do that. But a lot of times I'll give a kind of an impressionistic direction. This one is a little bit more chill and about love, or this one is a little bit more funky and whatever. And they just go with it, and hopefully I can kind of tie things together.
Yeah, you've been writing poetry for a long time. Then, what first interested you in poetry and the lyrics and the words?
Well, honestly, I'm an old Deadhead, so I used to tour around and see the Grateful Dead a ton of times. I think it's over 100 times. It was late 80s into the 90s, and I'd walk out with Robert Hunter's lyrics in my head. And so of course I love Jerry's guitar solos and the drums and everything, but what drew me in was the lyrics. And so from that kind of poetry or song, and then also the beat poets have been a big inspiration. And so I've done the deep dive, gone all the way ancient to the future with the poetry.
Yeah. How do you approach your creative process with it? Like, is it one of those things where it just spontaneously comes and you sit down and you write, or do you keep a notebook or something else?
So it comes in a couple ways. There's some that just like come pouring out. And so I get an idea or a line, and 5 minutes later I've got something and I never touch it again. And there it is. A lot of times it's a line or two will kind of pop into my head. I travel a lot. I walk around a lot, and things inspire me that way. And what I do is something I learned from reading about Gary Snyder. He was Jack Kerouac's friend in the Dharma Bums, if you ever come across that. And he said, you get a line and write it down right away. Just hold it a little bit, let it kind of marinate, and slowly that tension will build up and another line will follow it in another line. So it's kind of a combination of those two. And then, I'll go back and edit and work things and keep them going,
Yeah. And I can imagine, so over 100 shows with the Dead, about how long did you tour? How long were you following them around?
So the first show that I saw was at the Metrodome here in the Twin Cities. It was the Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, Grateful Dead at the Metrodome. Yeah, it was horrible because the Metrodome was a big football stadium and the sound in there was crazy. And I said, oh, I don't know if this is for me. And we had tickets to Alpine Valley the next weekend. And my friend said, come on, we got the tickets. We got to go. And we got to Alpine Valley and it was like, wow, just all of a sudden I got it. I understood what was going on and the music hit me. And then I was a bit obsessed. So it was, like I said, over 100 shows between 86 and about 91 or 2. And then I'd come back and dip into the scene. But yeah, I was pretty full on for a while there.
So through those heavy years of touring, you had to see a lot of stuff, experience a lot of people, hear a lot of stories. Out of that, what would be a poem, a piece of work that you wrote that immediately comes to mind from one of those adventures?
So one that sits heavy with me is called The Cheer. That was one of the first kind of musical ones that I did out of that. And I could do it real quick for you if you want to hear it real quick.
Yeah,
I could do it.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
So I'm not a trained musician. My music is really, kind of like this. But when I work with musicians, things change. But as a spoken word piece, it kind of just goes like this. It goes flow, free, fall into the one and all, the one and all, trip, sky, ride, fly into the darkness, open eyes, weep, cry, weep out all that's still there, weep out all that's still there, press, moan, hum, tone, bells ringing, bells ringing, bells ringing, it's a new day. Ride and fly into the sweetness.
That gave me tingles, like literally. And it's interesting to hear the way you do that. I could almost hear music in my head behind it, right? Like I was almost in my brain putting my own kind of, probably from listening to you at Poe Road. But I love it. I think it's so cool.
So the thing, I would add briefly, one of the things that I did, following up on your question, what did I learn? I learned that experience is dark and light, right? I mean, the happy hippie, the tie-dyed, all that, and the colors that we bring to it, wonderful. But there's also a darkness to that experience. Yeah. And that darkness is something we have to go through to reach that kind of light. And so, I carry both of those with me, I think.
Yeah. And you can feel the rise at the end of the song that kind of pushes you back into the light. I like it.
Yeah, thanks.
So in doing all this and in spending all this time touring and whatnot, one of the things I learned about you is that you have an affiliation with the Pranksters. I'd love to know a little bit more about that because I'm fascinated. I've read all the stuff about that, and so tell me about that experience.
Well, I read it all too, and it existed as kind of a myth or a fantasy or whatever. And then in 2014, Zane Kesey, so Ken Kesey's son, Ken wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He had the bus and all that. So Zane in 2014 wanted to put the bus on the road. It was, I think, the 50-year anniversary of his father's trip out east to the World's Fair. That was the trip in '64 when he pulled up at Leary's place in Millbrook and all of these things, crazy things happened. Yeah. So Zane put that together and he put out a general call of people who would be interested, creative people and just regular folks who wanted to ride on the bus. And I was lucky enough to be one of the ones selected for a portion of the trip. So I rode on the bus for about a week. They said after the week, they said, oh, you can keep going, they don't kick anybody off the bus. You can keep going. And I had to roll back to some shows. So I left. But for that week, we hit a bunch of festivals. I performed at some of them. And we even wound up at Woodstock at Bethel Woods for, I think it was one of their anniversaries. They do a summer thing. But it was crazy, Nate. I tell you, there were moments of just like surrealism. Like you're on the bus. I mean, it's the bus, an iteration of the bus, but the bus is the bus. There's no, difference between the old one and the new one. It's the bus. And I looked up and I'm like, man, there's Zane Kesey driving the bus, and look at all these pictures on the walls of the bus. There's Neil Cassidy, and there's this. And then we'd pull into festivals, and all the old pranksters and heads would pop out. So I met some of the OG pranksters, and it was wild. It was really fun. Yeah. Met Sam Cutler, Rolling Stones and Grateful Dead
wow.
Manager. Yeah.
Manager, yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What do you think what Kesey did, or like with the original, bus and the tours and the acid tests? What did that do for music? What did that do for culture? Because it's kind of this underground subculture that people know about that nobody talks about, and yet it had an impact. What was that impact in your mind?
Well, I think the biggest one that pops directly into my head, and the Grateful Dead talked about that, the original acid tests. So there was a paradigm, and the paradigm prior to that was there's a band or a performer on stage, and there's an audience, right? And you've got this kind of wall between them. Well, now here they're in the acid test, and everybody's crazy high. Things are chaotic. They can play if they want to or not, but everybody's together. There's no separation between the performer and the audience. The performer would take energy and inspiration from an audience member dancing, and they'd play that dance. So that kind of cohesion, I think, came out of that scene. And they talked about that directly, the idea of, oh, there's this person on stage and we're separate. No. We're all together. We're all collaborating. We're all creating the energy. And in the best festivals that I've experienced, something like that happens, where that kind of wall dissolves, and all of a sudden we're together, the musicians are with us, and we're all creating something. I think that's really one thing that came out of it for me.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you describe that. One of the other folks we talk with, hopefully more regularly, is a neuroscientist by the name of Dr. Paul Zak. And he's done a lot of research to put chemical markers behind what you've just described, right? That community, that energy. It's really fascinating that years and years and years back, Kesey saw that without really the science behind it. It was just an awareness of it. And I think you've hit the head on the nail that, you go to a festival now, and that's really what the experience is about, that back and forth.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's a really old thing. I mean, it's ancient, right? Musicians or people who led drum circles way, way, way back, thousands and thousands of years. It wasn't about trying to put on a show or glorify a performer. It was about taking everybody to another level of energy or level of emotion or realization. And, I get cold by like the big pop concerts where the performer's up there and everybody's got their phones, and there's this horrible separation. I much prefer something where we're all together and we're creating something special. Yeah.
I think that was one of the special things about Poe Road too, is it is a smaller venue. It was at the time a newer venue, although they seem like they're really doing well over there. I'm very pleased to see their season coming together, but it did have that sense of everybody was together. There wasn't really an audience or performers. It was just a community. It was a group that had music,
Yeah. I mean, my sense of that place, and I agree 100% with you. I mean, those people who were there, those were the people who cleared the land and had the dream before those festivals started to pop, and so I think the core group of those people there really have their heart in that place and on that land, and you can feel it. Yeah.
It's a cool venue. I encourage everybody who's watching this, check out Poe Road Music Sanctuary in Ohio. It's awesome. Yeah. So Adam, this is fascinating. You've had so many cool experiences. Where are you going next? What's Flow Poetry doing this year?
Well, so I've got a summer tour coming up real quick. That's the main thing on my mind, starting June 8th and running through June 26th. It's my most ambitious tour. I usually have been able to string 8 or 9 shows together, and I do it all myself. I have some help and some friends in some places who will help me. But boy, it's like, 400, 500 emails to get it together. And I do all the promotion and the press and line up the musicians. So this is the most ambitious one, starting June 8th in Minneapolis, running through Des Moines, Iowa, Madison, Wisconsin. I might forget some of them. A couple more, Stevens Point, Wisconsin, Kenosha, Wisconsin. A really cool house concert in Indianapolis on Sunday, June 15th. Yeah, it's called Clear Vibes House Concert. And I've seen pictures of it. You just set up in her living room, and there's hopefully 20 or 30 people there, and have a good
cool.
time of it. I'll be in Columbus, and then moving to Cleveland, a little tea house, Sacred Vortex kombuchery and teas. I'll play anywhere, Nate. I really like that's part of the deal for me. Like I don't stand on ceremony, man. Like coffee houses, living rooms, music venues, theaters, it doesn't matter. Street corners, I'll do it. And then an East Coast swing, Albany, New York for the first time at a place called Ophelia's. A private party in New York on Staten Island, and then Woodstock. There's a place called the Shiva Stan Poetry Ashram, and he's got a little backyard garden, and he does poetry events. And then headed back west at the end of the month, Cincinnati, right outside of Ann Arbor, Saline, Michigan, a new venue called the Arboretum, and then ending up at the what's that?
I said, I think I've heard of the Arboretum before, or like it's
kind of just popped up. It popped up. And then ending Friday, June 26th at the Zero non-alcoholic bar in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So
that's awesome.
We'll be toasting the end of the tour with something. I don't know what it'll be.
Right. I like that. I mean, they know their brand. That's interesting. That's cool, man. Congrats on all the dates. And I wish you the best of luck. It sounds like a really cool tour. And final question too, is that different musicians with you every time? Is some of it just poetry, or is it the same traveling circus? So
it's going to be a little bit of a mix. I'm able to do a solo show at this point on my own, but I love working with musicians, so any chance I get. So in Des Moines, a guy named Joe Scarpolino, Smoking Joe, he was in a band called Dead Larry. I think they're still around. And I think they do some festivals like with the Useful Jenkins folks and the Harmony Park Wookie Foot folks up there.
Yep.
He's going to join me. Then in Madison, that was where I lived for 25 years. All my old buddies from the old bands are going to come out. We're calling it Flow Poetry and Friends, have a big old jam.
That's cool.
Up in northern Wisconsin, my longtime musical partner, Casey McCrum, he's done a lot of ambient work with me. He'll be there. Indianapolis, Liz Vega, who played harp, she's going to come back. I said, come on, we got to try this again. It'll be fun in the living room,
She was good.
She's
really good.
She is so good that I could just be like, everybody, I'm Flow Poetry, and I'm going to go backstage for about 40 minutes and chill out, and you enjoy Liz, and then nobody would be the wiser or complain. And then I've hooked up with Ralph Mouth from Glow Stick. I don't know if you've heard of Glow Stick.
Yeah, Ralph is a good guy.
Willie, and now they're Glow Stick. So Ralph is such a talented percussionist and drummer. And so the two of us are going to go. He's going to help me drive because I'm getting old. I can't drive myself all the time. And we're going to do that East Coast swing. So I'll have him for about 10 dates.
Nice.
And so that's the joy of it. The people we meet along the way, Nate, is really what it's all about.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love the approach, and I love what you're doing. So we'll definitely put links wherever we can in the descriptions and the show notes and all the places that we put them. And I appreciate you doing this. It's really fascinating to hear your stories, and definitely best of luck on the tour this summer.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for all that you do. I know you mentioned you've got a lot going on in Colorado this summer, and I'll be tuning in and following you. And I encourage everybody who hears this to make sure they follow all that you do, because you're doing the work to bring the music to the people, and that's what we need. So thank you so much. Thank you.